I'm Phil Brink. I'm the consulting coordinator of Colorado Cattlemen's Ag Water Network. CCA likes to host these webinars from time to time to help keep ag producers informed about water-related issues that affect them. And one of the issues that definitely affects irrigators in particular is this issue of declining water supply, especially if we're in areas where we're under compact compliance or we've got requirements under settlement agreements with other states, as we do in the Republican and the Rio Grande. And so today's topic is going to be on the Colorado Master Irrigator Program. And that's a program that came about really out of a requirement for a couple of basins, the Republican and the Rio Grande, to dramatically reduce their pumping. And we'll be talking more about that. But the Master Irrigator Program is a producer training and peer-to-peer learning program that focuses on advanced water and energy management tools and strategies. And the program started in Colorado in the Republican River Basin, and it's now expanded into the Rio Grande River Basin. And there's another program that's also being developed for the southwestern corner of the state too. So our presenters today are Brandi Baquera, and she is the program manager for the Colorado Master Irrigator Program, and Paul Brittain, who is a farmer and a livestock producer in the Republican River Basin. And he is also a program graduate of the Master Irrigator Program. I think the original one that they started out with back in 2020 there in the Republican. Today's webinar is being recorded, and we will be posting it on our website when available, along with the highlights of the webinar. So I'll try to send out an alert on that when it's available. If you have questions, you're welcome to type those in the chat box. We'll also have a little bit of time at the end for questions and answers, and you're welcome. Serves as the program coordinator for the Colorado Master Irrigator Program, as I mentioned. She is also a groundwater commissioner for the Colorado Division of Water Resources. So she is a rather busy person, and in her spare time, she has a husband and 3 children, and I think at least 1 dog and cat. So she's got a full schedule. So Brandi, if you are ready, I'll go ahead and turn it over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Phil. Thank you for that great introduction. I must add, I have a couple chickens also, so we have our whole funny farm out here. Yeah, so thank you for having us here. I know Paul and I are both excited to share the information about our program. And as you mentioned, I work full-time for the state, but Master Irrigator is kind of my baby that I like to push throughout any spare time that I do have. So I'm happy to present here today, and thank you again for inviting us.
Yeah, we're glad to have you.
So can you see my Master Irrigator screen right about now?
Yes, we can.
Awesome, thank you. So what we have here is just a brief presentation that I'm going to go through talking about our Colorado Master Irrigator Program and specifically about the Republican River Basin. As you mentioned, we do have a San Luis Valley program as well that's been successful the last couple of years. Greg Peterson is our coordinator for that area, so he can definitely share more details, but this is mainly about the Republican River Basin for today. Well, I have a couple of pictures, and I'm sure we can zoom in and find Paul's face in here somehow, but this is our original graduating class of 2020. And then next to it, our 2022 graduating class that we didn't quite get everybody in because I forgot to take the picture before everyone left. And then this last winter, our 2023 class. So as you can see, we've had success definitely in the Republican River Basin. So far, between the 3 classes, we have nearly 100,000 irrigated acres represented through all of the producers that have attended. Give or take, we've had some that are not producers themselves, but crop advisors. And so we hope that they share the same information that they found with Colorado Master Irrigator to all of their customers. So what is Colorado Master Irrigator? Essentially, we're a 32-hour professional development course. Like I said, it is offered right now in the Republican River Basin as well as San Luis Valley, but we are looking to expand to the southwest corner of Colorado. The organizing meetings are getting started here this spring. So we hope to be able to launch that early next year or possibly even this fall, depending on how quickly we can get it put together. So that's exciting news for us. All of the programs are organized and put together by a farmer-led, what we call project advisory committee. So what we mean by that is originally with the Colorado Master Irrigator Program out here in Republican River Basin, we met with over 30 local representatives, and many were producers. We had groundwater management district managers, we had local business owners, a lot of CSU extension agents, and a lot of help from local organizations like the RWCD and crop consultants. And when I say it's a little bit of everything, it's absolutely a little bit of everything. And we do that, and we meet monthly, or originally we met monthly to design the program and get a good curriculum that goes over everything that we hope to share in that 32 hours. So we focus mostly on advanced conservation and irrigation management practices. But that's not the only thing that we go over. This is a very fancy description of saying we speak about anything from water probes to drones, all the way down to the importance of well maintenance and how important it is to check your nozzles every year or winterize your wells. So it's not necessarily new information, but it is tried and true. And we do touch on a little bit of the research, but we focus on what we know works and how it works and how small changes can make such a big difference. So in the end, the goal is to equip our participants with knowledge and connections they can use to save water while maintaining and enhancing farming profitability. That very end part, profitability, is one of our main focuses. We want to make sure any changes that we encourage you to make won't come at the cost of your operation. We need the production out here. So how does it work? We borrowed the program or modeled the program after a Master Irrigator program that is run by the North Plains Groundwater Conservation District in the North Texas Panhandle. I attended a Ogallala Summit in 2018 in Garden City, Kansas, where the manager of the North Plains District shared their Master Irrigator program. And at the time, I was a groundwater district manager for the Plains Groundwater Management District out here in the eastern side of the state. And we had been discussing conservation programs and plans and trying to figure out a way that we could help our producers, try to find a way to work with these compact agreements, as well as just the depleting water table. And Steve Walthauer from this North Plains Groundwater Conservation District, he presented on the Master Irrigator, and I thought, my goodness, that just answers all of our questions. It's everything that we need. So they were willing to share with us every detail of how they put their program together, and we brought it back to Colorado and made it work for us. So each year we offer an opportunity to come through the program to 25 people. The idea is to keep the class small so you can continue to get to know each other, and it's more casual. You talk, you don't just sit through 32 hours of presentations. You really interact with each other and learn from each other. We also have local businesses come in, and they will offer discounts and incentives to our producers.
Yeah.
Okay. The idea of Colorado Master Irrigator is somewhat to, incentivize conservation and efficiency. And in order to do that, local businesses pitch in and help. So, but also we are currently funded through a few different grants that we've been able to be awarded. The RRWCD has donated significant funding through their conservation grants that they have available to their local groundwater management districts. So when the local groundwater management districts don't have use for those grants, the RWCD twice now has been willing to donate them to our program. We also initially started with some small grants from the Colorado Water Center and are mainly funded by the Colorado Water Conservation Board through Water Supply Reserve Fund and Colorado Water Plan Grant. So what these funds are used for is obviously to hold the program, but also to pay incentives and stipends for our producers to come in and graduate from the program. each participant is paid a total of $2,000 upon graduation, and it's broken up into smaller payments. And when they graduate, at the end of the program, we hand them a check for $1,250. And then at the end of each irrigation year, we send out a survey asking them to essentially report what they did. If they, implemented any of the conservation practices that they learned, if they were able to save any water, any of that vital information that we can track and just sort of make sense of whether or not Colorado Master Irrigator is working. And each time they fill out one of those surveys, we pay $250. So one survey for 3 years, and the $1,250 upon graduation, so a total of $2,000 stipend. And again, that is funded through our grants and donations. So how do we think this is going to help? Well, obviously, we hope that this is going to encourage water and energy use efficiency. Our farmers are super efficient as it is, so we're not teaching anything new. We're just kind of spreading more things of what's already happening, and maybe emphasizing how important it may be. We also discussed the pros, cons, and costs of a lot of the water management tools and strategies. You might have heard of some new like VFD or something that sounds interesting to you, but you haven't had the time to really sit down and talk about it. And we try to bring those topics in and give you an opportunity to ask people who have used those technologies and whether or not they've worked. We also try to help producers in finding ways to make that conservation profitable, to make it work. If we can help find a way to make a connection with another grant opportunity or, the people that offer these services, we really want to help do that. As with pretty much any basin in Colorado, interstate compact discussions is a pretty big topic. And we really do have to focus on that throughout Colorado Master Irrigator to kind of explain why it's important to be efficient and why we need to conserve. Out here in the Republican River Basin, we are currently facing where part of our basin, a big part of our basin, is having to permanently retire 25,000 irrigated acres. And Colorado Master Irrigator helps or wants to help kind of point maybe how we can help that. And if for any reason we can't get those acres retired, if maybe we can quantify a way to save that water without giving up those acres. So again, we provide incentives, discounts, and other opportunities to our graduates. One of the things that I do really enjoy about our program is we offer a Master competition each year. And basically what that is we ask our participants to apply for additional funding that we get through donors and sponsors. And we ask them to test out something that they've learned within the program. If it's implementing moisture probes or setting up a new renozzling package or something, we ask them to do that. We provide up to $10,000 and follow them through it and interview them through it. And Paul was one of our lucky 2020 Master competition winners. So we like to think also that Colorado Master Irrigator supports a network of a younger generation of producers. On average, our participants are in their 30 to 40 year age. So we think we're working on the younger generation and helping provide information. This is just a copy of our 2023 agenda that we held this year, along with some pictures that we've stolen over the years of our participants. As you can see, the classes are tight. You're sitting very close to your person next to you, and they chat throughout it, and I get to take pictures of them laughing at each other. But if you look over the 4 sessions that we hold, there's topics from, like I said, irrigation equipment maintenance to the soil moisture probes, economics, history of our hydrology, and any retirement program opportunities. So there's a lot of information crammed into 4 days. And yeah, it can be a little overwhelming, I guess. So I just included a few quotes from some of our graduates, just so you don't have to hear me bumble, you can hear straight from their mouths. what they've taken from our program. And 2023 graduate said, I really enjoyed the producer panels because you could see how the things we had talked about got applied in real life and the results. And in 2022, someone shared the interaction and discussion between in-person students and presenters is my favorite thing about the class. One question typically turns into a very nice discussion about something that wasn't talked about, or even a more in-depth answer that was wanted. And that's really what we want to encourage in Colorado Master Irrigator, is that discussion, having those one-on-one talks and maybe coming up with new ideas and new possibilities of what can be done outside of the class. And then another 2023 graduate shared that I enjoy the variety that is presented. The speakers are detailed and specific, but they are not presenting on such a narrow band of information that ideas are constantly repeated. So I really, we survey our participants quite a lot. We ask them to answer a lot of questions because we want that feedback to find out, hey, is this working? Are you enjoying that? And how can we fix it? And each year I'm amazed about how well it is received, and how something so simple as putting 25 people in a room and asking them to chat with each other really does help. And it does seem to break out new topics and new ideas. So 2020 graduates shared that I love the open discussion with the speakers and attendees. We can really discuss different ideas and see how they work in different environments. So that kind of wraps up my presentation, short and sweet, just sharing what we have. This is a flyer from our 2023 partners, like I said, that help us in offering incentives and really feeding a very nice lunch to all of our participants, because it's a long day and food helps. But I'm happy to answer any questions.
So feel free to ask a question, or if you want to just put that in the chat box, either one is fine. So, Brandi, you mentioned putting people in a Zoom and putting people in a room and asking them to talk to each other is kind of an amazing thing in terms of the results it can produce. And I just wondered, what are the biggest questions that you hear that kind of bubble up often among these different training sessions that you've had? And what are some of the strategies and most frequently adopted tools that you see?
I'll start with the easy question. I think the most adopted tool are moisture probes. Because of the incentives and the funding and the discounts, it's easier to implement a simple tool that, although they're not new, they're not necessarily trusted just yet. And a lot of our information really does focus on how helpful those probes can be. So yeah, definitely moisture probes seem to be a more recognized, or a most often implemented. The questions, it depends on the session and it depends on the year. This year in 2023, one of the big focuses was on the retirement of the 25,000 acres and how we can, I guess, save our water. Because if we're save our water in our communities, I guess with the retirement, the big concern is shutting down communities, because without having the agriculture and the irrigated acres, our economy takes a huge hit. So those were definitely some of the more popular discussions and questions, I would say, as well as, I found it very interesting. And I think Joel Schneekloff is on, and he's one of our repeat, not only is a project advisor committee member, but he's also one of our repeat presenters. But, there was a lot of discussion about residue management this year and cover crops. So again, it changes year by year and based on the location that we're at, but I would say those are the most common.
So we've got a question in the chat. What's the process for getting the program in a new base? And lots of interest for this program in Arkansas. And, you talked briefly that you went to the North Plains Groundwater Conservation District in North Texas, and I think maybe attended one of theirs, and then, chatted with them about, providing all the details of their program. From that time that you started that, how long did it take? And then you had assembled a, producer-led advisory committee, I guess, and created a curriculum from that. How long did that process take and what did that look like?
Well, I attended the summit in 2018, and as soon as we got back that summer, we started kind of gathering and trying to convince and try to find some funding and such. We began our project advisory committee meetings and gatherings in 2019, and we met monthly. And it took that entire year to really get it all developed. And in the meantime, while we're developing curriculum and agenda and lining up presenters and such, we were also applying for grants and looking for the funding. And so it was a very busy year, but overall, it took us about a year and a half to get it all put together. But what we are finding, San Luis Valley was able to be rushed together in like 6 to 9 months, I believe. And we're hoping with the Southwest program, it can, we've been talking about it for about a year. So the really intense planning will probably take about 6 months. So to answer the question on how it happens, honestly, we have a pretty good, I guess, package on what we expect of our Colorado Master Irrigator program and how you can put one together. It's just a matter of putting up with myself and our team of coordinators that we use across the state, because what we have developed is a statewide project advisory committee that we can hopefully continue to expand across the state. So if I look in the chat, sorry, Arkansas Valley, Lauren, I would be happy to meet with you and discuss on how we could figure out a way to get something in your area.
Let's see, Callie, did you have a question? Go ahead and unmute if you want to ask that.
Yeah, thank you so much. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay. I work with Valley Food Partnership in Montrose, Colorado, and we're a nonprofit dedicated to connecting local people to their agriculture, but I also run a beginning farm rancher training program. My question is, do you think that this program could be implemented or partnered with nonprofits like ours on the Uncompahgre Valley or in the Colorado River Basin to as partners, or do you really, because you're with the state and working with other universities, that they would really stay within that stay within those stakeholders?
Okay, I'm sorry. I might have misunderstood. So what I'm hearing is I guess first I want to clarify, me working for DWR is completely separate from Colorado Master Irrigator. Colorado Master Irrigator in itself is a nonprofit. It's not a state program. It just so happens I pull myself in 40,000 different directions, and this is one of them. So if I understand your question correctly, it wouldn't be an issue of just staying specifically within state funded or state sponsored areas. We have discussed, yes, it would be a good fit. The beauty of Colorado Master Irrigator is the curriculum and the agenda. The idea is to adjust it, the topics and everything that's needed based on where it's held. So like the San Luis Valley agenda is quite different than the Republican River Basin agenda and the curriculum. Sometimes we do share some of the presenters, but for the most part, they're different programs with the same setup and the same kind of general information. And our main requirements are, high quality information put together. So does that answer your question at all? I'm sorry.
Yeah, thank you for that. I just needed some clarification on that. So thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can tell you that we, especially with all the focus on the Colorado River right now, we have discussed how we could implement a program in that area. So I'd be happy to chat with you as well if you would be interested.
More quick question from Greg Vlaming, and then we'll move on to Paul. But again, we will, after Paul's finished, we will come back to Q&A. But Greg is asking, what is the timing for the possibility of this program in the Southwest Colorado? And I think you mentioned that that program is being developed now?
Right. So here in a couple of weeks, we'll be having our first kind of organization lunch, organizing the actual program and the agenda. And I believe originally the timeline was in the hopes that we could have it launched in the fall. But I'm not 100% sure on that. I don't know if that's changed since our original discussions, but it's starting right now, and hopefully we can offer the program soon.
Okay, so stay tuned. So we'll move on to Paul, and Paul is, as I mentioned, an early graduate of the program back in 2020, and he has continued to support the program. Paul and his family live near Adelia, Colorado. That's down in southern Yuma County, and he is in the South Fork of the Republican River Basin, which is kind of ground zero for the area within the Republican, that there's going to be a lot of acres that are going to be taken out of irrigated production. And Paul grows alfalfa, which is a rather large water consuming crop, and other forages using center pivot irrigation. So he's very much affected potentially by this compact requirement. And he also runs a pretty decent sized cow calf operation. So he's got a lot going on. So Paul, if you can start us off with a little bit of background on your operation and what the water situation looks like for you.
Yeah. Hey, good afternoon, everybody. So yeah, we do have 5 wells that are all within 1 mile of the Republican River, the South Fork of the Republican River. And so the shutdown, obviously, our wells are dead center of that target zone. We haven't experienced where we're at a huge loss of gallons per minute. But I do know that not too far from us, there have been significant wells are pumping significantly less water than they were several years ago. So do understand that that there's an issue, and need for conservation and efficiency is very important. Yeah, without the water, I couldn't do what I do without the irrigation. One of the reasons why I wanted to figure out here, use this program to help figure out some efficiencies and maybe even some deficiencies in our operation. So I think that's kind of why I originally attended, just to maybe back up a little bit. I didn't grow up I grew up farming until I was, high school. Then I went to college and did a few other things, and spent several years in the military, and didn't actually come back. I didn't come back to the family ranch because the family ranch was sold years ago, but my folks moved out here to Colorado. And so we came out here, and it's a whole new struggle from what we were experiencing in Illinois. And so yeah, so that's kind of, I guess, back up. That's kind of my history, is that I was a farm kid, and now I'm back on the family farm, and my family and I are now managing it. So the program itself it's all over the place, from the science, the hydrology, to the technology, to just the sidebar conversations. And I think that's key, that there's some lessons that they teach, the science and all that, and then the give and take of the lecture and the feedback from the attendees, and then that might go off in a different direction. And as Brandi mentioned, when I went, it was the topics that we talked about were different. That was before the mandatory shutdown really got everybody's attention, and that this last year, I'm sure that was the focus on everybody's mind was, what are we going to do? How are we going to get around it? So that's that. Like I said, that's that give and take, and then that after class communication, the fellowship, sharing ideas from that. I still use that support group to this day. On why can't I plant this after this, or do you think it's going to work, or hey, this worked for me. You might look at some variation of that and see if that works for you. And mistakes are expensive, so if we can help our fellow agricultural, the farmers, ranchers, with mistakes we made or they made, and share that, that's huge for me. I have taken advantage of some of the programs like the NRCS, FSA programs, the equip type stuff. I do have moisture probes. I was, we harvest alfalfa every 28 days, and the wells are shut off for, a week, maybe even as long as 10 days. And so I was always under the impression that as soon as I got the harvest done and the hay off, that I need to get those wells back on, and they need to run nonstop until we do it again. But I was willing to try some moisture probes, and even last year when we didn't have any rain, I was able to shut wells off. My profile had gotten to a point where I could go, a little bit, not very long, but I could go for a little while without running them. And so I saved myself some money, and then save some time and energy and water that way too. So I do believe in technology. I do think we sometimes get too wrapped around technology. And as Brandi mentioned, one of the classes that I think I got the most out of, or the presenters I got the most out of, was the local irrigation company came and talked about well maintenance and sprinkler maintenance and all that. And I knew it, but it was just great to be reminded that you do have to do some upkeep on those, on the nozzles and everything as they do age out. So it was some of that simple stuff, that maybe we get too involved in the technology and all that gee whiz stuff that we forget about, that simple stuff. So, but anyway, I guess, Phil, that's kind of where I was at on that. I don't know if you got any specific questions you want to talk about. I kind of rambled on through the whole deal, but.
So no, that was good. You mentioned one tool was the soil moisture probes that has already allowed you to save some water. And then kind of a strategy is to use maintenance, probably put that more at the forefront, or at least to remember to focus on that as much as, so many other things that you have to focus on, but just to remember maintaining that system, maintaining that well, and checking it from time to time. I'm wondering, what other types of tools and strategies have you been experimenting with, and what have you found so far that kind of works?
I've used equip money through the NRCS to update my panels. For example, at the pad there, the panels were old. They had for example, they had a dial on them to set your speed, and I use digital readout where you can actually set the percentage that you want versus kind of guessing where that dial's set. And then they all have, you know, remote monitoring well kills now. So if for some reason the sprinkler system shuts off, it doesn't sit there and because it never shuts off at, you know, for whatever reason at 2 o'clock in the afternoon when I'm standing right there. It's usually 10:30, 11 o'clock at night, and I don't get back out there till first thing in the morning. So it's, you know, it would pump all night in one spot. And now, for whatever reason, if the sprinkler stops, the system itself stops, it will kill the well and save that water and electricity for when I get it started and not making a big mess. So I think those are probably the two biggest improvements in efficiency that I've made. I do as you on that slide there, you can see that's a cover crop. That's oats and peas. I have learned and as I rotate the alfalfa out, I use cover crop. I don't have any row crop or harvesting type equipment. So when I rotate alfalfa out, I try to find a way to do it using a forage. You know, I don't know. There's probably over maybe 1 million cattle on feed here and within an hour. So I have no trouble selling feed stuff as I wait a couple years for that alfalfa to the aflatoxin in the soil to go away so I can go back to alfalfa. So.
Okay.
But, yep.
So, you know, one of the things you mentioned was the energy part of it, that you save not just water, but electricity. Have you seen a significant reduction in the amount of electricity that you've used, or is it just kind of incidental?
I think it's incidental. I mean, every time I save money, the YW raises the rate. So every time I try to save kilowatts or hours or whatever we're measuring it in, it seems like my electric co-op will raise the rates next year. So I don't know. But it all adds up, right?
So I guess this question is both for Brandi and Paul. Do you see this program as being one that's, I mean, really going to be useful in helping those folks that are going to need or going to take the option of, let's say, drying up or shutting down their wells and transitioning into a dryland kind of farming? Are they going to be able to harness, you know, some of the things learned in the class, or is it just mostly focused on more irrigation and energy efficiency for irrigators?
I hope that they can, because although the name implies, I mean, it is Master Irrigator, it is focused on irrigation. We are hoping to implement or include more dryland kind of type practices in the future, because a good majority of our producers have both dryland and irrigated acres. And, you know, water conservation applies to both. So
Question in the chat box: who are the locals involved in the planning in Southwest Colorado?
So right now, Emily Lockhart from CSU Extension is who is kind of coordinating the efforts. She is also being helped by, I'm going to have to look up his last name, but Gus. Sorry, Gus Westerman. Yes, Gus Westerman. So they are, you know, leading the efforts and the coordination. They're working alongside us directly, and they are developing a good little project advisory committee. If I'm sure if anyone is interested in joining that, you can get in touch with Emily, or you can get in touch with me and I can connect you.
So, Brandi, you mentioned the stipend that's paid to producers for attending the class and going through it and graduating. And then there's some additional funds that are, I think, for incentive payments for implementing practices. Is that right?
Well, not directly. So the incentive funds are that $2,000 stipend. The only other incentive I guess that we have is the master competition. So I guess you could call that an incentive funding to implement some of the practices. And how that works, it's kind of based on the sponsorships and the partnerships that we get for that year's class. But we offer up to $10,000 in reimbursable funding for implementing tools and practices that were learned in the class.
And then whatever is learned from, I guess, the master competition, is that shared out with the entire group?
It is. Well, the idea of it is with our 2020 graduates, so Paul and 2 others were master competition winners. We were able to follow them and interview them in their fields and kind of get some information and some breakdowns of the things that they were able to implement, as well as with the rest of the class, we do send out the surveys asking kind of the same information. I guess one of the fine print details of being a master competition winner is that you join our project advisory committee and present your project and your findings or whatever you were able to implement at the next Colorado Master Irrigator class. So it is shared. We do use it a lot for promotion as well. And something I failed to mention, but luckily Paul did, thanks Paul, is our graduates, we were lucky enough to have Clint Evans, the state conservationist, the NRCS state conservationist, be a part of our project advisory committee. And he was able to negotiate that our graduates receive a 20% priority bump in their equip applications. So that's another huge incentive for our graduates.
Okay, go ahead, Joel.
Yeah, another thing, Brandi, I think we missed on it is, our leadership in the water side is getting kind of on the older side. One of the goals that we had and from some of the producers was, let's identify the younger generation and figure out who can be the potential water leaders into the future. And that was brought up partway through the first year of planning. I don't know if you remember that, Brandi.
Well, I didn't want to say that too much. I don't want people to think we're roping them into all of that, but yeah.
No, I mean, if you can identify them, talk to them, get them interested.
No, I'm teasing you. Yes, we're secretly, we're pushing them in to become leaders. They just don't know that. Sorry, Paul. Surprise.
Secret's out now.
I
Well, that
know,
does tie
I
in
know.
well with what Callie had asked about for beginning farming and ranching training. And I don't know if if there would be something like in the Uncompahgre and Gunnison River Basin where you could come up with some type of a hybrid, or if it would need to be the 32-hour. I guess back to your point, Brandi, that each basin so far has really tailored or customized their program to their individual needs. So I suppose there's potentially room for that.
Right. The structure of the program remains the same. It may not have, each program may not have the stipends. They may not have the same kind of incentives. I know San Luis Valley pays out their stipends differently than the Republican River Basin does, but the structure of the program, the idea of the peer-to-peer communication and, demonstrations and presenters from all over remains the same, but the actual content can change based on what's needed. And I think what we have found is a lot of our young farmers that are participating, they're getting a lot out of it, because we kind of assume that, some of these practices and a lot of the ways to do things are handed down generation to generation. But just like with anything, I might assume that I'm teaching my kids how to properly spice that spaghetti sauce. However, they didn't quite get it, so if they have to attend a cooking class to get it, then it helps, them understand better. And one of our, that's probably a bad analogy, I apologize, but that's the first thing that came to mind. But one of our 2020 graduates, we were able to put it on a video where he shared that he learned more in the first session of the Colorado Master Irrigator Program that he had learned in the last 5 years of farming. And that was exciting for me to hear because he was a young producer, and being able to share those things to help in such an early part of his operation, it was exciting and good. So
Okay, Paul, did you have any other parting thoughts?
No, I guess just there, like at the end, my dad raised corn for years and he saw no need for technology. He'd go out, feel the dirt, feel the plant, stick his tongue out one way and know that, that it needed water or that needed nitrogen or whatever, and I think today's generation relies a lot more on technology. Not that there's anything wrong, and I think you should be out there in your field, but that technology adds a layer of either confirmation or support to what you're doing. So maybe not one and not the other, but in a combination of both, you need to something strong to consider. And I don't know, it's a good program. The science, I think in the first one needs to remain. I didn't understand that water in the Ogallala moves north to south. I just thought it went straight down. So it moves into our Ogallala Basin north to south, and it takes years for that drop of water to move any distance at all. So, just that kind of thing that was talked about. And again, they're great programs tailored to your specific area. Ours is because where I live in Yuma County and Washington County, in that area is heavy into center pivot irrigation wells that pump 1,600 gallons a minute north of us, and so that's why ours was tailored towards center pivot irrigation, where if you got groundwater, then make it about groundwater, but do the time and money and effort to make it right, so that you're educating. Water's not going to go away. In fact, it might be the next World War starts over, water. So it's an important factor in today's world. So let's take these classes and build on them. But I guess that's it. So thanks for having me.
Yeah, really appreciate it. Question in the chat: is there a newsletter that folks can sign up for to be aware of new Master Irrigator Program activities in their area? I don't think you've got one right now that would be going out statewide, do you, Brandi? But if somebody's interested, I guess it's a kind of one of those things where they would want to just contact you. Would that be the best way to start?
yeah, a newsletter is a good idea, but you're right. No, we don't have anything right now. We do have a website that we keep relatively updated, more so, closer to the actual programs, but that website is comasterirrigator.org. But definitely contact me. I'm happy to share the information whenever we have something going, or if you're interested in being a coordinator for something like this in your area, we can definitely have some discussions. My email, actually, it's probably easiest if I just put these addresses in the chat. So I will do that real quick. But I guess, Phil, if you're okay with it, I have one more thing I would like to share.
Yeah, go for it.
So I'm just going to pop up a flyer that I had put together this last November for one of our partners, the RWCD. And I just kind of want to point out, if you can see it here, that even during this major drought, we had 50% of our participants reporting using less water in the past years. So the mindset change is really a big part of our program, and something that I think is beneficial no matter where you're at, just the understanding, like Paul said, of how the hydrology works and the science behind it and why it's important really is a good part of the program. So
Yeah,
with
that's a
that,
great point, and it's a kind of an amazing thing, especially the contrast where during a very severe drought, you've got 50% reporting using less water, whereas in the not to pick on the lower basin of the Colorado River Basin, but they did the opposite. They they used more water. So yeah, I guess Colorado is kind of the cutting edge of figuring out ways to save water and remain viable, which is where we want to be. So if there are no other questions, we're going to go ahead and wrap it up. And I would just reiterate that if you do have a question that pops in your mind later, you can send that to Brandi. Or if you have a question for Paul, you can send that either to Brandi or to me, and we'll forward that on to Paul. And we really want to say a special thanks to Brandi and Paul today for presenting. This is really great information and a really wonderful program that people are getting a lot of use out of. And also, again, if you have any questions or comments or ideas for future webinars that you'd like to see us cover at CCA's Ag Water Network, please let me know at phil@brinkinc.biz. So with that, I'll just say thank you all for joining us today. And we'll go ahead and close this webinar down. Have a great afternoon.